Homie likey. Welcome to the channel where all you gotta do is upgrade your fuel injector tester. So my first video on this thing, I came up with some issues I needed to fix, and so I started fixing them. So show you what I got going on here. So this is my wire holder. Just bolts up to the original holes there, so these wires don't get all tangled up. I also added a couple of zip ties to it to make it, happy. But this just basically goes like that. Just made it out of what I had laying around, which is a piece of PVC pipe. So that should be fine. And then I got this filter, which is a 13 micron high pressure filter, which is kind of unique. It's made for a boat. But it has a barb end instead of it having a high pressure fitting like this guy does. It has just a barb. So that's the part number right there. R0824A. They're like 10-12 bucks for that. So I'm gonna stick that. Here's my plan. I drained all the fluid out of it. This, I think, is the intention, is you just go like this and it drains out. So I just drained it into that. And put this back in as a fuel gauge, so that's kind of nice. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this guy off of here and put a T, and then that's going to be my return back into this little hose here. And then I'm going to take this hose off of here, look at that, and pull it through into here, like that there. And then I'm going to put my filter inside here. And I'm also going to put this damper, because pressure pulse is, bad. So that'll convert it to a 1/4 inch. Right? I'll go from this 3/8 inch stuff here. Actually, I think it's 5/16. Probably says on it somewhere. 8mm, yeah, 5/16. And this is a 1/4 inch push on, so I'll use some of this Aero stuff. Got that laying around from race car days. So this filter and this regulator will be inside here, and I'll put some Adele clamps or something to mount it. And then this regulator, which I just went down into the wine cellar and found it, but this is basically a Saab 900 fuel regulator, but all these Bosch regulators are essentially the same. Some of them are 2.5 bar, some are 3 bar, some are 3.5 bar, but this one happens to be 2.5 bar. You can almost read it there, but I googled the number. So I'm going to stick that like it's made to go there. Almost, not quite, but pretty close. So that'll be there. May have to trim this bracket off a little bit. It's a nice mounting place for it. And then this is an old crusty fuel pressure regulator. Again, I showed the patent schematic on this guy, and this is like very big and way bigger than it needs to be. But the reason it's like this height is so tall, is because on the 96 Mustang, it had where the fuel pressure regulator was mounted on the fuel rails, it had to like go up far enough to clear the intake manifold plenum. So this really could be way shorter, but that's what it had to be in this application. So, and I just happen to have one laying around, so why not use it? So now I could just use compressed air and regulate the pressure going to here and here, and that would adjust the fuel pressure, but that's just more complexity and stuff. So I'm just going to put a little screw in here with a spring and then I'll just add to it. I'll pop this guy apart a little later and show you what's inside there. Not on my list, but this gauge is really hard to read, especially since there's a giant bubble right where the... Now I could get some baby oil and stick it in here, fill it up a little more, but that's a really small gauge, so I think I'm just going to add this guy here because that's easier to read, and it's about the range I need. I don't need to go 150 psi fuel pressure. There's no reason for that. Nobody runs 150. As a matter of fact, the injectors probably are full open over 100 psi or 100, somewhere around 105 to 110 psi. They just don't close anymore. So that's inappropriate, but you know, whatever. I don't know. They had their own gauge custom made with their logo on it, but I'm not sure why. Anyway, so that's that, and then yeah, so this thing will just live right here. So you have a slight interference problem, but I could probably do something to whittle that around. Like I said, it doesn't need any of this stuff anymore, so maybe I'll just chop that off, be done with it, and all I need is a little thumb screw up here. So, I mean, I could hang a weight on it, whatever. Anyway, that's my plan. Can't change the pulse width, nothing I can do about that. Regulator, yes. Gravimetric, I have a plan for that too. So this is a bottle for salsa, hot sauce. And I have 3 of these laying around. And you just put acetone or cutting oil or whatever in them. So I'm just going to stick those right there. I'll weigh them all and then put a label on them how much they weigh with no fluid in them. And then I'll just buy some more hot sauce. Not like I don't eat the stuff anyway. So that's my plan for gravimetric measurements. And then I got to fix the adapters. I already talked about that. I didn't have a filter and damper on my original one, but... And then, I don't really need the lights, I guess, but I'll see if I can still do something to fix on that. Okay, so I've been playing with my new toy today. And just tested it out, and it works a little bit Abby normal for me. I usually test it out while I'm making the video. This time I didn't do that. But I got my supplemental fuel pressure regulator. This is one of the Allen engine parts. But I've also checked off a bunch of stuff on my list. So now it has a fuel pressure regulator. I just threw some 24-pound injectors I had laying around. And this gauge is a little bigger, but it's not damped. It doesn't have the fluid in it, so it's not damped. So I may switch that back out to the old one. I don't know. But let me show you how much different this is now, and then I'll pop the back off and get an idea of what I've done. You have to plug it in. It doesn't turn on. It's the weirdest thing. Alright. Beeps and flashes and lights. So let's go straight for the Gusto high-speed test. And we'll do the high-speed test, and then this is it for, this is at 3 milliseconds, I believe, for a minute. Well, let's just get it going. Okay, so there's our fuel pressure. About 40 psi. I meant to run the acceleration test because that's the one that was screwed up before, right? looks like it's dropping a little below 40, so I can just bump the pressure up a couple. And it stays right there. And let me show you how that works. I'm going to put back to the high-speed test. And see, that's 40 psi. If I go up, nothing happens. If I go down, okay, so now that's limited by the pump and not by the regulator. So now I just need to have this thing so it has enough flow to be on the regulator. See, it's not doing anything now. And then over here, I'm going to add this little rusty spring that I had in my spring bin. You can see as I push down on this, pressure goes up. Takes quite a bit of force, but I'll put a little wing nut on there or something. And then I'll have like really, really fine control of the pressure. Okay, so this is what I've come up with so far. I got this 2.5 bar regulator on here. I don't know if you can read it, but it says 2.5 bar there. This is a supplemental fuel pressure regulator. I just chopped this off of there. I rethreaded these 2 holes for M6 and then contrapted up a little spring arrangement here so you can adjust. And then down in here, it doesn't help much, but I got the pump down there and I got a return. So let's just follow it from the tank. Goes into this, goes through this filter, and then this is a damper. So it goes in the damper, out of the damper into the fuel rail over here. We got a new gauge, comes out of the fuel rail, goes into the fuel pressure regulator, and then out of the fuel pressure regulator there, and that circles around and goes back into that little rubber, little 90-degree elbow on there. So same pump, seems to be fine, doesn't lose any pressure. I mean, you have to bump it up a little bit from when you turn it on. And then I just added a hole in the cover there. So I pop the cover on and then tighten up that M8 nut. And then, yeah, you already saw that, I think. Alright, so now we go to the acceleration test. And start that guy. It's a little bit, drops a tiny bit. Maybe 42 pounds to 41.5, so I'm just going to bump this up a couple. There. And then this thing, you can adjust the pressure on this guy, so you can go from 2.5 bar to, I don't know, 3.5 probably. We need a bigger spring to go more than that. Okay, so this is what I've done to fix some of the other problems. I just took some of this plastic, that just like kind of translucent plastic that came on the wheels for the Fastang, just to keep it from, you know, abrading on the cardboard inside the box. And I just cut a piece off and jammed it in here. Can't really see it unless I take this tape off, but it's just kind of dispersing the light a little bit. And then I just put some painter's tape on here. So now it doesn't glare. And I don't know if you can see these ones better anyway, but this seems to work pretty good. I also added a nice new gauge. I got my regulator on, which I think I showed earlier. And then I also added these, I put some nuts on the bottom of here just to hold these threaded rods in place so they don't, you know, it always loosens up from here, not here. But then it's kind of nice to have this held up when you're putting the new injectors in. So if you pop these off, then you can just kind of wind those guys up to kind of hold it in place so it doesn't flop all over the place and whatnot. So yeah, so there's only two things that I wasn't able to fix on my list. One was, well, these buttons are backwards too. I'd like to fix that, but I can't. You can't change the pulse width, unfortunately. Let me show you what my complaint is here. So I want to start this test. So this is a medium speed test. So I push start, and it's 3 milliseconds pulse width. Now I can change that to 4 milliseconds, whatever. And if I pause it and restart it, it stays at 4 milliseconds. But if I stop it and restart it, it goes back to 3. So the only way I can do a test at anything other than 3 milliseconds is to change it to the milliseconds I want. Let's say I want 5. And then I have to pause this at some even number of seconds. Well, it doesn't have to be even, but and then, you know, drain it out, and then start the test from there, and then it stays at 5. I can just run my test at 3 milliseconds. It's not that big of a deal. It just, you know, it takes a little bit longer to run the tests. So if you were doing this every day, all day, you'd probably want to, you know, do what I just did there. The other thing that is not awesome, let's bring this down to 45 psi. Okay, so now we're at 45 psi. We'll stop that test. So that's all well and good. But when you start the test up, this apparently doesn't have a real fuel pump in it, because a real fuel pump, like from a fuel injected car, has a check valve in it, so it can't backfeed. So when you turn the car off, your fuel pressure will stay for days or weeks at the supply pressure, right? Because the regulator has basically a check valve inside of it, and the fuel pump normally does, but this fuel pump doesn't. And I didn't change the fuel pump. It has plenty of flow. The problem is when you start a test, it takes, I don't know, half a second, whatever, to get to full pressure. Is that going to skew the results? Yes. Is it enough to worry about? Yeah, probably not. So I'm not going to worry about it. I was thinking about running a couple of tests where I start and stop it, you know, the same, like I run one test for 3 minutes, and then I run another test, the exact same test, except for I pause it and restart it 5 times or 10 times or 20 times, just to quantify the difference between. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty minuscule, because most of these are fairly long tests. Like the idle test I run for 20 minutes, and the medium speed test I run for 7 minutes, and the high speed test I run for 3 minutes. So that's 1 second out of 180, so it should be a pretty small number, and it's, you know, it's not like it waits a second and then goes to 45. So anyway, the solution to that is to put a proper fuel pump in here that has a check valve built into it, but I'm not sure if I was like a guy that was testing people's injectors for them, I would do that. But This is just for my own personal, you know, hand wavy stuff. So, but this works pretty good now. Let me do an acceleration test on it. So this, now that this has a regulator on there, it stays pretty darn steady. Yeah, you can barely notice that and it's going to take a little bit of time for this thing to react, right? Because it's a mechanical system. It's basically a PID loop with no I or no D. Basically just proportional gain with the spring. So it's going to take a little bit of time to react, but it's a pretty small number. So anyway, I'm going to call this good enough. And actually, I have no complaints about this, you know, for what this cost and what it does. It's got some little quirks, but nothing too concerning. I did mention in my earlier videos that I want to make a gravimetric measurement thing on here. Not sure that's necessary. I may do it, but I've run this test. Like I run the same test multiple times and I get the same result. If somebody else read it, maybe they wouldn't, but it's pretty consistent as far as reading it within 1 cc. So gravimetric is going to be obviously more accurate. So, but anyway, that's it. It's a pretty good machine. I would recommend it. With, of course, you know, the blue pager tape on it, which, you know, adds some flair. If you like this content and want more, don't forget to subscribe and like and share and all that good stuff that people usually don't do, which I get. I don't do it that often either, but I do it. I do it sometimes, yes.